one of the roles that's really important in our model is the adult mentor who works with our coaches. And we tell our mentors every season, please be there, but don't step in. Because it's those uncomfortable moments that these young women will learn the most from. And at the end of the season, when we ask them, what are you proud of? What did you learn? What is a situation that you would handle differently the next go around? Those uncomfortable, sticky, ugly moments that they don't want to do over, those are the ones that really stay with them. And those are the pieces that build resilience and help us learn lessons.
Hey, y'all, it's Danny C. Welcome to the Happy Life Agenda podcast. I am so excited to introduce you to today's guest, Pam Baker, founder and CEO of the Women's Coaching Alliance, an organization dedicated to growing the number of women coaching in youth sports. So, Pam, welcome to the show. I'm so excited you're here.
I'm so glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. So you have an incredible career history, and then you made the pivot to coaching in honor of your late husband's mission. So I would love it if you would tell us a little bit about you and the story behind Women's Coaching Alliance.
Well, thank you for saying it's incredible. It's obviously not linear, but I spent about 25 years in healthcare in big companies, small companies, had transitioned to starting a new organization back in 2017. That was moving along nicely. And then in May of 2020, my husband was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, and it was stage 4. So things moved quickly, and he passed away just a couple months later. And so, it was August of 2020, everything was mid shutdown. And he was somebody that people really wanted to say, let's do something to keep his memory alive. And candidly, there are only so many meals that you can eat. So our neighbors really took good care of us. But I really thought about, what was the thing that he really loved and that lit him up. And there was no question it was about coaching. He was somebody who was an athlete himself. He was the product of great coaches. And we have twin daughters who are now almost 18. But when they started to play sports, he was the first one to raise his hand to get out there and coach. And every season, he would look for women to join him, because he knew that both they would be better off and he would be better off with a female role model. He knew that women understood girls better than he did. And every season he would come up short. And he would say, where are all the women coaches? So when he passed away, we set up this fund within our local Parks and Rec organization and said, let's do what he was trying to do, which is get more women into coaching kids and give more kids the opportunity to play sports. So that's the idea of where it started. And truly, I had no idea what that would mean over time. So it's been fun to watch.
Oh my gosh, that's so cool. I mean, that's such a pivot for you, and you just had to feel your way through it, right? I mean, you didn't innately know when you started this what to do. Can I ask that?
Absolutely. I had no idea. I mean, and it didn't happen immediately. I sort of bumped along in the darkness for a year or so. My daughters were home from school, and I really had no idea what I would do. I left the work that I was doing because I realized I was not being a good mom to my kids. I wasn't really handling the grief piece, and it was easier to do the thing that I knew how to do than sit with the discomfort of grief. So I stepped away, and there was a whole big identity crisis that went along with it of who am I now that I'm not running this organization? I'm not a wife. I'm not a partner. All of the things that we have as titles, when those go away, of course, there's freedom of more flexibility, but there's a real who am I now kind of question that certainly came up for me. So it was also not linear. Eventually, I got a chance to talk to lots and lots of people to try to figure out how we would make use of this fund and do something that I think really would make Doug proud, but it certainly didn't happen overnight.
I appreciate you sharing that because one of the things that, as I've been interviewing women, I think I'm almost at like 50 guests, is that we, don't see the stumbling part. And so if we're open to sharing it, so thank you for sharing that, because we all think everyone, like you keep saying, the linear path and whoa, they just woke up and magically everything fell into place. But when you're getting started, it's scary and you have to make those mistakes and fumble in the dark, even if you were a top executive. Because I know in my mind, I was like, oh, she was an executive. She probably just fell into this and it worked out. But coaching to or executive to coaching, it's a whole new world, right?
Not at all. Yeah. I mean, I think one of the things that benefited me was a real sense of curiosity. I would go out and say, this is a space I know nothing about. I have never coached sports. I've played sports, not well, but I know nothing about coaching. And that gave me the flexibility to go and ask the really stupid questions of people and not feel as though, oh, I should know them, because of course I couldn't know them. But I think you're so right. I do think as adults, we tend to tell the story to younger people of, I did this, I did that, and I did that, and therefore it all worked. And we kind of pretty it up. And I really do think that does a disservice to young folks to miss out on. It was hard. And I had some conversations where people told me, that's a really stupid idea. That's already been filled. There's this organization that's doing lots of that. I don't think there's a need. We have a woman in our community who I talked to early on, and she came to an event that we hosted last month. And she came up to me and said, I have to apologize because I am so sorry. I told you that this didn't make any sense and it was a mistake. And now I see what you have created. And I don't even really remember that conversation. And I said, it's fine. It's all good input. And I think when you peel away what's behind that feedback and is there validity to what it is that you're focused on, I think it helps depersonalize it and say, okay, that's just where this person is coming from. But I really do think that we as adults have to share some of the, wow, I was scared, I was freaked out, I just fell on my face. Those things are part of every journey.
Yeah, exactly. And like I think back through my career, because a big part of, starting the Happy Life agenda is kind of going through that identity crisis from chief marketing officer and climbing the ladder to like, okay, I don't have any of those titles. Who am I now? And, being okay with that discomfort and then looking back over all the things that I thought were failures in my career and seeing how it shaped where I'm headed now, even though there were some really like painful experiences, right? So thank you.
Absolutely. It's part of the whole puzzle. It's not all or one, because, and through coaching, one of the things that we talk about, we have identified what are our 6 values for the Women's Coaching Alliance. And a big one of them is learning and growth. Because when we take a young woman who is 16 or 17 years old and has played the sport and is coaching for the first time, I guarantee you it will not all go perfectly. It will not all go well. There will be some things that will really be uncomfortable. The moments that they look back on and go, oh my God, I can't believe I did it that way. Oh, wow, I really wish I would have said something different. And that's the point. And, we can talk a little bit about how we do what we do, but one of the roles that's really important in our model is the adult mentor who works with our coaches. And we tell our mentors every season, please be there, but don't step in, because it's those uncomfortable moments that these young women will learn the most from. And at the end of the season, when we ask them, what are you proud of? What did you learn? What is a situation that you would handle differently the next go around? Those uncomfortable, sticky, ugly moments that they don't want to do over, those are the ones that really stay with them. And those are the pieces that build resilience and help us learn lessons. So to pretend that they don't exist, I think does everybody a disservice.
Oh, absolutely. And, this is a really great place to start diving into what you do because, as I was preparing for this conversation is the skills that these women will get from coaching, and you're hitting a great, segment or generation, I should say. I was about to say segment of the market. But 15 to 26-year-olds who are coming into a world that is completely different than we were that age. And they grow up with, screens and social media and AI. And so the skills that you teach, the adaptability and proactivity and creativity and problem solving, they need those, but they don't get them if they aren't involved in programs like this that really help them foster and learn that. So can you talk about, kind of how you foster those skills and even share stories of women who have transformed because of it?
Yeah, absolutely. So again, our model is we develop female leaders through coaching youth sport. So that's really our
Love that.
focus is we're using coaching as a way to develop what we expect will be lifelong transferable leadership skills.
Wow.
And so we bring young women in who have played the sport that they will coach, and we pair her with another young woman. So they're coaching in a team of two. We train them, they get an adult mentor, and then they get paid. And so this is not an assistant coach model. They are the head coaches, these 16,
Wow.
17, 18-year-old young women. And they've never done it before. And so, absolutely, they have to learn, how do you communicate with parents? How do you
Mhm.
communicate with kids? Because that's different. How do you communicate with the sports organization that you are coaching for? All of
Wow.
those require some different nuances in communication. And the mentors are a really big piece of that. How do you learn how to connect with every kid on the team so that you're motivating them, seeing what they bring uniquely, and plug them in there as much as possible? And that's a
Yeah.
great leadership experience, just like all of us do when we are leading a team of people. We're trying to figure out, what do you bring? What do you bring? What do you bring? And how do I engage you in a way that leverages your skills, but also stretches you in a way that you want to stretch? How do I organize a group of people of, a group of 8 that equals the impact of 10? How do I help my team through a difficult loss? Oh, we almost had it, and
Mhm.
then in the last minute the other team got the goal and we lost the game. But we've got to get out there and practice. We got to get it and ready for another game next week. How do I lead the team in learning from our losses? What are we going to practice on? What were the keys to what we could have done differently, and where we need to focus our practice this week to get ready for next week, and get everybody excited and feeling part of it? Having some difficult conversations with parents who, not terribly surprisingly, may want their kids to play more minutes than they are. So how do they navigate that and keep things relatively fair on the team? All of those are experiences that, as leaders, these young women will have as they head out into the work world. And so that's what we know will happen. And we train them to help guide them and prepare them for some scenarios. But we can't, nor do we want to, make sure that they have all the tools for every scenario, because that's part of leadership, is being able to adapt and understand what's in front of you and handle that particular situation as opposed to a cookie cutter approach. And then to your question, I mean, we hear great stories from these young women. I keep joking that I'm going to do a study where we measure them at the beginning of the season, at the end of the season, because I swear they all stand at least a quarter of an inch taller. Their
Wow.
shoulders are back. They carry themselves differently. It is visible and it is palpable. And we hear young women talk about, I was so nervous talking in front of a group at the beginning of the season, and now I'm okay doing that. We had one young woman who, AYSO is one of our partners in the rec soccer space. And this gal was a high school junior and went to the AYSO board, made up of all adults, and said, I would like to join your board. And they said
Wow.
no. They said no. So she went out and she coached another season. She went back to them and said, I am still really interested in joining your board. And this time they said yes. But just imagine the courage that it takes for a high school young woman to do that, not once, but twice.
Yeah.
So those are some of the stories. It's super exciting. And the one other thing I will say is, we coach girls and boys. So the other thing we know that we're doing is we're normalizing the experience for boys seeing women in leadership. And we
Wow.
had a great story of this little fourth grader who was playing flag football and comes to his first practice, and he sees the coaches on the field, and he looks at his mom and he says, I can't believe I have girl coaches.
No
So
way.
she luckily said to him, look, they have played the sport, they've been trained, they're ready to go. And so he goes out. 45 minutes later, he comes back for a water break, and he said, I just have a really quick break, but that's okay because the coaches are really good. And so that's the stuff. Like that's
Wow.
the it's no big deal that I have a female coach. Of course women can lead just as readily as men can. And that to me is sort of that societal level impact that we're looking to
Yes.
change bit by bit.
Oh my gosh, you just spoke to my heart right there because that is, at the foundation of all of this that I'm trying to do, and I think a lot of women and what you're trying to do is we just want to have women be seen, heard, and valued at the same level as men. And it starts with the modeling because, our patriarchal society throughout history has not modeled that for us. And so really it's just a default mode and not that it's not possible. So that's such a cool story and
Yeah.
such a cool byproduct of what you're doing.
It,
Amazing.
it's super fun to watch, and I will say, it is, to your point, it's not about pushing the men out. I want women to be up there side by side because
Yes.
we can learn an awful lot from our male advocates and
Yes.
our male colleagues. And quite frankly, the what we've seen in terms of our growth, a lot of that has been thanks to the men who support the work that we do. And there are so many of them out there that are cheering us on and saying, how can I help? Because this is something that we need. So this is not a women only movement. This is people who are saying, how do we bring the best voices to the table? And those will involve women.
Wow, I'm blown away. This is so exciting. I had no idea that this was part of what you do. But I do want to touch on, as I was listening to you describe everything, is how, parallel that is to a corporate work environment and the skills that you need. And if I could have started at 16 and really learning that stuff, oh my gosh, what a different person I would have been climbing the ladder, but even a different leader. This is something that if you're listening and you're in that Generation Z, take advantage because, oh my gosh, I know that, they say nothing can prepare you for corporate as well as just playing team sports, but this takes it to the next level where it prepares you for corporate leadership. I mean, just working leadership, let's just say that.
Exactly. Well, it's funny you say that because when we asked young women about this idea before we had built anything, they were super interested in coaching younger kids. Sports had done something
Mhm.
powerful for them. Many of them hadn't had any or many female coaches, and they liked being that first for other kids. And then I said, well, what would get in the way? And all of them, to a person, said, dealing with the difficult parents. And I
Yeah.
thought, oh, shoot, that's a deal breaker. And then I realized a few days later that that skill to navigate conflict and difficult interactions is one. I don't think I learned it till I was 40 something. And if I could have learned it earlier on, boy,
Yeah.
how much more impactful could I have been heading out into the work world? So that's what we see
Wow.
ourselves as doing, is front loading all of these leadership skills and experiences so that young women enter the work world with this amazing toolbox of skills ready to navigate different situations.
Oh my gosh. Wow, that's I mean, like just what you said. I was probably in my 40s when I start to really like unravel this and to be young and learning those skills. So let's talk a little bit about because you've mentioned that there's mentors. So you're not just hiring, coaches in this age range and saying, "Hey, like go out and coach flag football."
Mhm.
You actually this program is, people in my age group could get involved and be able to help foster these skills and help prepare these girls. So tell me a little bit about the other side, the mentorship side.
Yeah, the mentors I would say are really key to our program because there are other organizations that will train people to get out there and coach. But we know we are asking these young women to enter a very difficult space. They are not the ones who are expected to be the coaches. I mean, the first couple seasons when we started, the coaches would send an email introducing themselves. They would have, the organization would say, we're partnering with the Women's Coaching Alliance. They would have their Women's Coaching Alliance swag and gear. They would have the clipboard. So
Mhm.
they had the whistle, they had everything that looked like they were the coach. And we would have parents that would walk right by them, find the man on the sidelines and say, "Hi, you must be the coach." And
Oh.
so we know that the mentor is really key in terms of guiding, supporting, helping these young women make sense of the what they see on the field, difficult interactions, and
Mhm.
so on. So our mentors are people, men and women, who have either coached or led or both. What we find is really key is that they are invested in helping these young women develop. And that's really it. So they don't need to have been a high level coach. They don't need to have run an organization, but they have experience in one or the other or both situation, and they pull on those experiences as they're guiding these young women, because there's the X's and O's of coaching, but there's also, let's set some goals for the season. What is it that you want to accomplish mid-season? How are you doing towards those? Okay, let's look at that communication, let's look at that email, and are there ways that we could tighten it up or clarify it? Let's talk about that parent who you're having some difficulty with, who isn't bringing their kid on time or isn't following the rules on the sidelines. So, what we ask of the mentors is to be at as many of the practices and games as they can be in person, because it's different to hear about what happened than to see it yourself. And
Mhm.
then to meet with the coaches weekly for about 30 minutes, however they want to do that, whether that's virtually, whether that's in person after a game, before a
Mhm.
practice. And really, that's designed to just give the coaches a chance to ask their questions, get some feedback. Sometimes it's simple things like we have high school seniors who are applying to college and they are super stressed out. Sometimes the role of the mentor is, okay, let's just take 5 minutes and do some deep breathing exercises. And like, let's lower that stress level so that we're ready for the day. So the mentors are awesome in terms of, reading the room, if you will, of understanding
Mhm.
what's needed at that particular moment. And that's the common theme of what we see is they are people, they're adults who really care about developing this next generation of young women, because we don't have the perfect playbook for every scenario, but
Mhm.
they are clever and experienced enough to know how do I handle this particular situation and set this young woman up for success.
Wow. Oh my gosh. This is another really cool element of this. Again, coming from corporate life, I can't help but see the synergies and see the value. And, one of the things that really, I think, helped my career was I had someone who I worked with who just took me on she mentored me. She didn't have to, but she did. And it made such a difference in my career and in my growth. And so now you're modeling something that when these girls enter the workforce, not only are they going to be well prepared leaders, but now mentorship is just in their DNA. And they've experienced it and know how to do it too, just from having it done. Just wow.
Right, and it's sort of like being able to handle difficult interactions. If you knew how to use a mentor, to see the value of a mentor before you start your career,
Mhm.
it can be so much more impactful. My experience was, I was part of this group that, I was told, okay, you're getting a mentor. I thought, okay,
Right.
great, I guess. I don't really know what to do with this person. And then when I had the experience of being mentored by this gentleman, he was amazing. And then I knew, wow, I should seek these folks out. I had heard about them, but I
Mhm.
didn't really have any context for them. Well, these young women have that. They've experienced, they've seen it. And so they will head out, whether they look for a mentor in their workplace or outside of their workplace. I think oftentimes it feels like we're pushing a boulder up a hill when we talk to
Mhm.
young folks about networking and mentoring. But when they feel the experience of having done both and we demystify it, I think
Mhm.
it's a different perspective once they head out into the work world.
Wow. Yeah. I just as a side note for anyone that's listening, from a young age, when you can secure a mentor all the way up to even if you're late in your career, having a mentor in life for all the different things is just that's something I've learned on this journey is we're all we all need someone to bounce ideas off of and give us that like objective advice and the expertise. And so just an incredible part of what you're doing. So now I kind of want to, it's only a slight shift in gears, but when we were preparing for this podcast, we were talking about some of the statistics that are on your website. And so we've touched on it in this conversation, but it's just, I think you said only 10% of coaches at the 2022 Olympics were women. Only 25% of youth sports coaches are women. And then I know C-level executives, only 32% are women. So obviously you're doing something about it with your program, but what are your insights as someone in this space, why there is such a gap?
It's really interesting coming from the corporate space to the coaching space, because my observation, I talked to lots of people and organizations when we had this idea about getting more women into coaching. And what I kept hearing is, great, we've been trying for so long. We want more women out there coaching. And I would talk to moms and say, so what about this coaching idea? And there were a couple of different flavors of the response. One was, my plate is already too full, which totally get that. Another flavor was, oh, well, I didn't play that sport at a high enough level. I was only D2. I only played it in high school. All of I haven't been trained in it. I didn't play it long enough. I didn't play it at an elite enough level, and so on. And now, mind you, my husband, whose sports were football and basketball, when our daughters wanted to play soccer, he was like, great, I'll go coach. Now, I had played some soccer, not well, but I was like, oh, I'm so not qualified. So I'm right there with him. This is not an indictment of other women.
Right.
I was right in that space. And, I remember him going to get the training for soccer, and he came home and I said, how'd it go? He said, oh, it's going to be great. It's going to be a great season. So this offsides thing, what is that? And I was like, oh my gosh, that's so basic. Like, how can you not know that and yet feel completely confident that you're going to be this
Yeah.
awesome coach? So then I come from the corporate world where we see some of this same dynamic. Oh, I think you'd be great for that role. But you know what? It says that I need to have been in my job for at least 2 years, and I've only been there for 21 months. Or it says I need to have this degree, and I don't have that degree. Or it says I need to have done these 5 different roles, and I've only done 4 of them. And so we put up these barriers as women that we are our own biggest blocker. And one of the books that somebody shared with me years ago, which I always reference, is The Confidence Code.
I love
I
that
don't
book.
know if, yeah. So I think it's, so for listeners who haven't read it, the premise is they look at why girls kind of drop off in confidence at around 12, 13, when early on they're all raising their hands. And, the short story, which you should go read it, but the short version
Yes.
is that at about that age, boys and girls get different societal messages. The boys
Yes.
get this message of, you should go do the thing, try it, crush it, you're going to be awesome. And girls get that message, but they get it with caveats, which are, yeah, but don't embarrass yourself. Don't make anybody look bad. Don't make anybody feel bad. And so what we internalize is this idea that if I'm not confident doing the thing, I shouldn't do the thing. And of course, what we now have the wisdom to realize is confidence is on the other side of doing the thing that kind of really freaks you
Yes.
out. And so that, I think, is one of the things that I hope this experience of young women coaching does, is that rather than having to reteach a lesson that confidence is on the other side of that thing that freaks you out, these young women go into life with the experience of, I was not at all confident coaching, because I will tell you, not a single one of them ever is their first season. They do it kind of with gritted teeth, kind of like, oh, I don't know. But the confidence comes from navigating through the season.
Yeah.
And so what I hope is that these young women learn the experience of, okay, it's just because I have the butterflies in my stomach doesn't mean that I shouldn't do it. So a very long-winded answer to your question, but my hope is that what we start to see is this sort of, revolving door, if you will, of women who are in sports leadership, coaching, or other, they have the skills to go lead in other parts of the workforce, and vice versa, that women,
Mhm.
even from the corporate world, bring that perspective into coaching and sports and what have you, because they are the same set of skills. But I think we as women, I think what we can do is help lift each other up and remind each other that just because you're really freaked out about it, like really dig into that. Is that the thing that's blocking you, or is there something else? And if that's the
Yes.
thing, we, I think, have a responsibility to hold hands and support each other in doing the thing that really gives us butterflies.
That was such a great response because, I read the confidence code and then on this whole journey, my thing is I want to help women show up in confidence. And I've been reading Elise Loenin's book on our best behavior. And she put out a workbook in August that goes with it called Choosing Wholeness Over Goodness with Dr. Courtney Smith. And they talk a lot about the subconscious programming that happens to us as women. And a lot of it is wrapped up in something that's completely different in the way that men are programmed. And it's, and we don't even know that we're doing it a lot of the times. And so we have to start unraveling the stories that we're telling ourselves, like, oh, I've never played soccer before, but I know sports in general, so I can't do soccer. Where it's like,
Right.
those skills were overlay. I mean, even for what you're doing, there's probably some conversation along the way that has to happen to say, like, okay, you did all of this coaching stuff, you have all these skills. Yes, you can go for the high level corporate job, because even though the job description doesn't say, blah, 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 those skills are there.
And I think part of that is helping people translate. Like, we
Mhm.
have a
Yeah.
number of high level athletes. We have a bunch of Olympians who are involved with the work that we do. And one of the things when you talk to those folks, they'll often say, "Oh yeah, but I didn't do the internship." And I always look at that and say, "Okay, let's look at what you were doing when other people
Yes.
were doing that internship. And let's take that work and say, what are the skills that underpin that? Did you get up at 5 a.m. every morning to train? Okay, well, that's about commitment. Did you have any setbacks? Well, that's resilience. Did you have to figure out
Mhm.
how to communicate effectively with everybody on the team? Great, that's communication." So, what they want out of that internship is that you've learned those skills. So, as long as you can market those and what you have learned from your time getting up every morning at 5 a.m. and training for the Olympics, that just showcase those skills, even though you're doing it in a different realm.
Wow. Another piece of the puzzle is that translation and being able to know how to have those conversations. You guys you do it all. So this has been such a fun conversation. And I had no idea like how, I grew up in a family. My dad coached all of our teams. My mom jumped in because there's three of us. So, sometimes she had to help out, but I never put it together because I never became a coach myself. My brothers did. So, but probably because as a female, right? I just was like,
Right.
that's a boy thing. So
Yeah.
this is so cool. So now that we've kind of, really broken down a lot of things, can you give us your top three takeaways since you really do help the Gen Z market and they are struggling so much right now? Do you have any advice for women that are in this age group that are entering the workforce and they feel scared? Like, what do I do? This is a whole new world than what my parents went through. Three actionable takeaways?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to dismiss or minimize the challenge. It's a world that is uncertain, that is changing quickly. And I think, again, I've got twin daughters who are going to be headed off to college next year.
Mhm.
And I think we as adults are kind of kidding ourselves when we say we can give them great advice, because what they are facing
Mhm.
is different than what we are facing.
Mhm.
What I would say is, especially for young women, please don't let those butterflies get in the way. Understand what's behind those butterflies, and if it's unsafe, there are reasons that butterflies exist that should cause you to step away. But outside of that, try it. Just give it a go. If it is the thing that you keep coming back to in your head, do something about that,
Mhm.
because there's probably something there that really fits for you. And sports is not for everybody, but I do think there is this unifying power of sports. I talked to somebody who works at a venture firm, and they are investing a lot in youth sports. And her comment was, in a world of AI, we know that the experience of actually playing sports can't be AIified, for lack of a better term.
That's
Um,
great.
which I think is a really interesting
Yeah.
insight. And so I think there's something to that,
Mhm.
of finding those places where you can get that human to human interaction is invaluable. And then, a third one, I think there will never not, and I realize that's a double negative, but there will never not be a need for the the skills of empathy and human interaction and
Mhm.
care, and regardless of the workplace, that those are the things that I think will really be challenged to have AI take over. And
Mhm.
I think one of the things that we hear is that for for young people, they actually, when they step into coaching, they automatically have to care about the 10, 12 kids that are on that field or on that court that they are working with. And that experience of, I care about that person's experience for the next hour, if not more, is invaluable. And
Yeah.
it allows us to break down some of the barriers of preconceptions of people who are different than us. And
Mhm.
I just think there's tremendous power in getting in community. Sports is a great way to do so. It's not the
Mhm.
only one. But again, the power of interaction, I think, is a skill that will always be valuable in any world, regardless of what happens to the workforce.
Wow, those are really great takeaways. And the age of AI, the Gen Zers, I think, have a real opportunity to, figure out what's going to happen for our future. And I love that you said those two key points is that no one, even if AI gets more and more advanced, they can't play the sport for you. So that movement in your body and all the things that you learn from team sports, but then also what it can never do is human connection. So even if a robot was coaching your team, it's never going to connect in the way that a human can. So those varying perspectives of the kids and making them feel seen and heard and showing up in their gifts on the field and the positions and all of that stuff, it can't be replicated. And that's what we need to be doing for our workers. That's what corporations need to be leading in this way, because human connection is what's going to make the AI tools that make us productive and efficient more effective. Because right now we're all just like picking up our phones and like, hey, tell me what to do, and turning off our brains. And this really illustrates how you can marry those two and be set in a technological revolution type world. So
Yeah.
thank you,
And that's
Pam.
what
Oh
we
my
all
gosh.
want, right? I mean, that's
Yes,
what, like,
yes.
when we get together with our friends, that's what we want, is the realness, the true connection, yeah. So AI won't take that.
Oh my gosh, that's so cool. I'm ready to become a coach, and I do feel scared saying that, but oh my gosh, this has been the coolest conversation, and I had no idea. So on that note, I don't think you're nationwide yet, but like take me through a little bit of like if anyone wants to be a part of this, how they can support you, how they can become a mentor, become a coach, and then maybe even what do you need, because this audience can be full of anyone, to expand this program so that we can reach more people.
Excellent. Well, I'm glad you asked. So, we are not everywhere. We are in the Bay Area. We just launched in LA County this fall, and then we just got a grant to go to New York as well. So, that's super
Wow.
exciting. And we have interest from a number of other geographies around the country as well. And so, as you might imagine, being able to fulfill that is largely about funding and support.
Mhm.
And that comes in
Mhm.
in the form of individual support, corporate support, and so on, because we do pay our coaches. And so that's about the
Oh,
most
wow.
expensive piece of what we do. So if you are interested in the work that we would do, the work that we do, I would say three things. One is encourage a young woman to coach. And if it's with us, great, we would love that. And if we're not in your area, that's okay. What we know is that young women really do need to be invited in. And when you talk to
Mm.
women who coach, I will say it's got to be 90% of the women that I talk to, it's because somebody asked them to coach. So encourage a young woman to coach and tell her that she's got
Wow.
what it takes and she can be a great coach and leader. So that's number
Yes.
one. Two is, again, if we're in your geography, sign up to mentor, because those mentors make all the difference of the work that we do, and providing that safe space for these young women to support them as they coach. And three
Yes.
is, we'd love your support. so that we can get more young women out there coaching and leading. We have found that this is a movement that has really caught on. All of our young women want to come back and coach multiple seasons. Our mentor group is growing by the day. The organizations supporting us are incredibly excited about the work that we're doing. We are a small, mighty, lean team. So all of the dollars really go to support the work that we do with our coaches. So yeah, those are three ways folks can support.
Oh my gosh, that's so cool. So if you catch that, is if you're in the West Coast, the Bay Area, and LA or New York, then you can get involved
Yes.
as a coach and a mentor. And then funding is the next way that you can help. And then we can start having conversations. I'm in Texas, so I'd love to see that here, and just kind of get this
Awesome.
program to expand. Because as a woman who's advocating for other women and movements that are really going to move the needle, I see this as one. So if you're looking for that space to donate and support a cause, this is it. Thank you so much, Pam. Where can we connect with you? Like what's your social media, your website? How do we donate? Can you tell me that?
Great. Yeah, absolutely. We are womenscoachingalliance.org. So there's a nice big donate button right on our website. And then I am on LinkedIn. So Pam Baker, Women's Coaching Alliance, usually finds me pretty quickly. We are also on Instagram, a little less so on Facebook. But I always love to hear from folks, even if we're not in your geography and you're interested, let us know, because it's that allows us to make the case to expand into new geographies. Those connection points of people who are saying, I want this to be here and I'd like to help make that happen.
Wow. Okay. That's amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that. Thank you for sharing all that you did today. This was such an impactful conversation and such an exciting conversation, especially like, again, in a world that where most of the conversations were like, oh, what do we do about AI? You gave us so many solutions. So thank you for that. And y'all don't forget that Pam has demonstrated here, leadership isn't limited to the corporate office. It shows up wherever you showcase your influence. So my team and I can help you elevate your influence and show up as the confident authority in any room with a strong personal brand. So you can visit happylifeagency.co to schedule a consultation. And then, of course, I'm going to have all of Pam's information on the happylifeagenda.com, where you can support the movement for women. And I thank you all so much for joining us today. Thank you, Pam, for being here.
Thanks for
And
having me. Such a fun conversation. And thanks for all the good work that you do.
thank you. You're so welcome. All right. Thanks, y'all. We'll talk to you soon.